The European Union has started using the anti-Russia sanctions as a repressive tool to smother civil society dissent within the West. Last week, Colonel Jacque Baud, a former Swiss army member and NATO advisor, was sanctioned, but so were several others before him, including activists and journalists. One of them is Hüsseyin Dogru, a German national who was sanctioned already in May. He joins us today to discuss his case. Hüseyin, welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. And thank you very much for taking the time to actually talk to us. Your case was actually one of the first ones in one of the first packages in which the European Union started sanctioning EU citizens. I think you were one of the three first ones. And you were, if my information is correct, actually the first one who at the time lived inside the EU and still lives in the EU. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened, when it happened, and what did that mean for you?
First of all, thank you to having me here, giving me that platform to talk about my case, because that's not usual these days, that people talk about that issue from a critical perspective. So what happened? I got sanctioned on the 20th of May 2025 by the European Union for being apparently, in their eyes, Russian disinformation actor. That was justified or explained through and with my pro-Palestinian, anti-genocidal news coverage with my media outlet that I had back then, Red Media, and also highlighting the complicity of European Union, and especially because I'm living in Germany, the complicity of the German government in this genocide. And that was categorized as disinformation. That was categorized as giving terrorist organizations a platform. That was categorized as creating social discord among the society. So the explanation of that, because people said, like, but the one has nothing to do with the other. Yes, it is true. But the explanation for the European Union in their sanctioning package and the 17 anti-Russian sanctioned is by giving terrorist organizations, referring to my interviews with Palestinian parties and militant groups, which are part of a war, and I need to talk to every side in a war. That's journalism, to be objective. That was categorized as offering platform and propaganda for terrorist organizations. The second topic was that I covered the news on university occupation in Hamburg. There was this very famous Humboldt University occupation, I think almost 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, where students occupied the university to show their solidarity and protest against the German government's complicity. That was also categorized as giving terrorist symbols a platform and spreading terrorist symbols and creating social discord. And the third point was that by covering social and violent protests within the EU, I would destabilize the unity of the European Union and the member states. So this is the explanation. And the Russia things come in here because they say by covering that, only Russia would benefit from it. So it is not the people who benefit from it to get have their exercise the right of information and my right of freedom of press and freedom of opinion that is granted here within the EU. They say no, this is something that benefits a foreign enemy country for us. Therefore, it is disinformation. And that happened on the 20th of May 2025, where suddenly from one day to another, I became, as one of your guests before, I think it was the BSW MEP who said, you become an outlaw.
Yeah. Michael von der Schulenburg, he pointed out, like, you lost most rights for a normal life inside the EU, and of course living in the EU, this is very this is extremely impactful. And I just want to underscore, like the accusations against you, and it is accusations because you weren't found guilty in front of any kind of court of justice. You were actually, I mean, you're not on, to my knowledge, you're not under any kind of criminal investigation, are you? I mean, there's not even a, is there any court case going on against you actually?
So you have to understand that sanctions are extrajudicial mechanism. There is no court, there is no hearing, there is no right to defense, there is no right for a lawyer, nothing. The foreign ministers of the EU countries come together. They have like a pile of paper with a lot of names, a lot of information, whom they don't really read, I guess. And they just decide on that. Okay, let's agree to that entire package. And within that package, there was my name as well. And that was offered by governments or by a politician or whomsoever. We think it was the German government. And you don't have that right. But with me, that it's by law, by European law, you have the right to defend yourself and for a proper court hearing, defense, everything before you get punished for something. But in my case, they did something very interesting. And I need to now be very careful by which kind of words I choose, because everything I say is disinformation right now and can be used to sanction me again. So that's why I'm saying now, we think or we assume that the German government and the European Union sanctioned me as a Turkish citizen, even though I'm German. They said Hüsseyin Dogru is a Turkish citizen, so we sanction him. Why did they do that? A European Union citizen has the right for a hearing, is a fundamental right. They have to give you the chance for court. But a non-European citizen does not have these rights. So they would have said, okay, Mr. Dogru is a Turkish citizen, sanctioned. So it was completely extrajudicial.
Yeah. And I just need to add, if you go, everybody, the European Union provides a sanction tracker, and which is also a database with an API, so everybody can interlink and you can be blocked from everything. But let's put that aside. On that sanction tracker, you are listed as nationality Turkey.
Yeah.
Just Turkey. Hüsseyin Dogru, Turkey. Russian nationality, Turkey. To the point that actually Sevin Dadelen had to reach out to me and tell me, Pascal, by the way, because I apparently said you were a Turkish national, because I thought you were a Turkish national based on this one. She had to correct me and tell me, no, he's a German national as well. So that's very duplicitous. That's so sneaky.
A lot of people say, oh, that must be a mistake. I said, no, this is not a mistake. There are two elements of that. I think there is one, institutional racism, that you as an individual who's not having a European citizenship means that he has no rights in the European Union. You technically have no right for a judicial process. This is the message, because that's why they choose that. And the second layer of that is, I think, to extend the boundaries of what is legal and what can we do on the illegal side, because sanctions are illegal. They're violating all fundamental European and European member states' constitutions and basic human rights, even though the European Union says on their website it's aligned with human rights, international human rights. I suggest that every European Union foreign minister should live just 1 week under sanctions, then they would understand how humanitarian that is. So there are two layers, the racism layer, and there is also pushing the boundaries. What can we do and what can the society accept? How far can we go to extend this oppressive mechanism in the European Union? I think also what kind of effect it has is also a scaring effect. Make sure people are scared. Make sure that people are like, oh, that can happen to me as well, because it can actually happen to everyone right now. I mean, with the new sanctions that came in effect on, I think it was the 15th of December, 15 or 16 December, especially with Jacque Baud. it is more scarier than my case, because they technically said with him, we don't like your opinion. That's based on, with me, they kind of try to make a little bit sense in a nonsense way, but with him, they were very open. We don't like your opinion. So there are several elements why they're doing that. And it is unfortunately right now working.
I mean, it is working in the sense that it scares a lot of people. It has already, some people on X said, I'm not going to report on Ukraine anymore. So this one is working. And it makes life for you, I suppose, very, very difficult. Can you give us an idea of the horribleness that this is?
A sanctioned person is a non-person, as Yanis Varoufakis said, non-existent person. You do not exist anymore, especially in my case, which represents a precedent case, because I am within the European Union living person, the first one who got sanctioned. You don't have like everyone thinks you don't have a bank account, you can't travel anymore. I'm not allowed to travel. I'm not allowed to leave the country. But they say you can enter the country because as a European citizen, they have to accept me again. You don't have bank accounts, but it goes further. It's like, I'm not allowed to work anymore. I'm not even allowed to receive money from my wife. Technically, or in theory, I'm not even allowed to eat from the groceries that my wife buys for home. I'm not allowed to do that because that could be categorized as an economical benefit for me. My lawyer said to me, Hüseyin, be very careful if you go out with someone to have a coffee, a meal, or if someone wants to give you a gift to support you, because the punishment is severe. You can go into jail for that. So
you or that person?
Both sides, because it's circumvent the sanctions. So
well, you would be punished for trying to circumvent the sanctions. I mean, that carries additional punishment if you try to do something.
You could, in theory, have jail punishment for that. So that is the one side, and the effect is you're getting isolated because people are scared of you, what happened to you, and on a daily basis, on a personal level, it is by sanctioning me that technically sanctioned my family as well. My 2 newborn twins, my 6-year-old child, and my wife, because that affects also their daily life. Our income is non-existent. The assets of my wife, who has nothing to do with that, are frozen as well. Her bank accounts, her saved money. And my children are affected by that. I'm not allowed to pay my rent. I'm not allowed to pay my lawyer. I'm not allowed to nothing, but I'm getting still letters from the government to pay my taxes. So if it comes to taxes, you have to pay them in Germany. That's very serious, but you're not allowed to have income.
So that wouldn't, I mean, the German state receiving money from you wouldn't count as aiding a sanctioned person, but anyone else receiving money from you, anybody else is illegal, cannot receive your money.
Receiving any kind of monetary transaction is not allowed for me. Either
except for the state, except for the country that does
except for the states, yes, except for the states. So I need to clarify here something. So what the state says, or the German Federal Bank, as well as it's called BAFA, Ministry for Foreign Affairs, etc. They are the two bodies who implemented the sanctions within Germany. What they say, we are allowing you to have 506 euros per month to use. That's your basic thing. With that, you need to finance your whole life.
But is that what you received once you applied for the humanitarian relief? No, that came separate.
That is money that I have on my frozen account. That is money that I, after 6 months, get from my unemployment money, which I had to fought for. But it is only 506 euros that I'm allowed to use in a city where the average rent in Berlin is something around 1,600, 1,700 euros. So you can now imagine with 2 newborn babies, 1 child, 1 wife who can't work as well right now, all the assets frozen with 506 euros trying to survive in one of the most expensive countries in Europe.
That's not possible. I mean, that's not possible. That is simply not possible. So something must be happening so that you do not starve or freeze to death. Did you apply for this humanitarian relief that I read about that can then give you extra allowance?
So what is possible to do is I have to contact every time when I need more money, even when I want to pay a invoice, I need to contact the German Federal Bank. And it is up to them to decide if it's an urgency where they can grant me a special permission to receive or to spend that money. And if they don't see it as an urgent matter, they say, no, you don't have to. I'm going to give you now an example. For example, I've lost my German ID card, which by law you have to have because there is a requirement that you need to be able to identify yourself when the police checks you, does an identity check on the street, for example. So I lost my ID card. I applied for it, which I have to. So in Berlin, you can only pay with EC cards, like EC cards. But I don't have an EC card because the bank does not give me an EC card. So I can pay with my card because of the sanctions. So then I'm writing to the German Federal Bank. I'm just saying like, okay, I've applied for my ID card. I need to pay that, but I can't. A, I don't have money, and B, I don't have a C card, etc., etc. Is my wife allowed to pay that? They said, no, that's not the urgent manner. They just decide, no, even though by law I have to. So there is that thing. People are asking like, why are they doing that? I think the sanction itself is not the punishment. Sanction itself is not the punishment. The process within the sanction, the bureaucracy, the permissions that you need to ask for, the paperwork, that is the punishment itself, because that is very stressful if you, like a non-existent person, need to ask every time if you're allowed to do something or not, if you're allowed to buy something or not. So this is the punishment itself. And the other punishment itself is also like, you want to fight that? They say you have the right to fight these in a legal court at the EU level, but how should I do that? If I don't have the money for that. Because a court case at the European Court of Justice where I need to fight that, on the first round, it will be, I think, like the lawyer said, 150 to 180,000 euros. So
what?
How is that even?
Yeah, 150 to 180 for a lawyer.
Approximately.
Yeah. But somewhere there. But lawyer fees or like fees to pay.
Is lawyer fees, is the fees for everything. Because a court also, if you go there, you need to pay, you need to go there, lawyer fees, research, everything. And my lawyers are in solidarity with me. They're like, take the bare minimum to be able just to have a case. They don't even take a salary for themselves. So how is that even possible to do, to get your right, to exercise your right if you don't have the means for that? That is sanctions today in Europe.
It is incredibly brutal. It's an incredible brutal thing, and then punishment or death by bureaucracy. How long does it take for the bank to reply to you? I mean, if you have to, everybody has to pay. I mean, unless you own your house, you have to pay rent. I suppose you apply for the permission to pay rent on a monthly basis.
Now what we do with that, I mean, in general, it depends. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, sometimes it takes a week. Like since 2 weeks, I'm trying to convince them that my wife needs to pay for my ID card. Since 2 weeks, I think 10 days, 2 weeks. So sometimes it can take as well. Or another thing, I've asked the BAFA, Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Customs, plus the German Federal Bank, if I'm allowed to work. I was sanctioned on the 20th of May. It's almost 7 months. until today, they couldn't figure out if I'm allowed to work or not. So certain things can take also very long. I'm just like, wait, you are very quick in sanctioning me, but since 7 months, you can't tell me if I'm allowed to work or not, even though it is my fundamental right.
Yes,
Even the
it's a human
sanctions
right.
package said I can work, but they say, no, we don't know it. So things can take a while. And if it comes to the rent, I mean, my wife is now not sanctioned, even though her assets are frozen. She's semi-sanctioned, so to speak. But she's now paying our rent with money that she gets from her family, from her friends, also with her unemployment money, because she is allowed to receive things only for herself and the children, not for me. So that is possible, but how long, how far can you go with that? How long can you exist like that? That is a different question and topic here.
I'm sorry, it's an utterly insane thing. I mean, they are not putting you into a prison, but in a sense they make it worse, because in prison you would at least get food and shelter and whatnot. But all of that is basically made as impossible as they can. And all of that based on what some bureaucrats decided on a top EU level, and then the state just implements that, which is also absolutely insane to me. I mean, at this point, the state should say, like, no, we're going to protect our citizens. But obviously, that's not what they do. I mean, there's all of these statements by the Bundespressekonferenz, by the press club, where people say, like, oh, no, of course, Germany will implement all of those sanctions, no questions asked. And the sanctions individuals should talk to the European Union. I mean, we are not I mean, washing their hands in innocence, right? It's not our decision. We just are faithful faithful EU country. What did you make out of that? I mean, you must be incredibly angry.
I'm not angry. Because angry would mean I did not foresee that certain political developments are going into certain direction. I'm someone who is very interested in politics, economics, geopolitics, state politics, etc., and in history as well. And we see if countries get in a financial, political crisis, parallel to that, the oppression starts as well.
Yeah.
Why? Because it needs to keep the society lay low and not protest. It needs to keep the society to focus on something else rather than the main problems. That is happening everywhere in the world. That's nothing unique for Europe. And if you look at Europe, since even before the start of the war in Ukraine, is like it is in a crisis, economical crisis. It is in a political crisis. We're shifting to the right. We're shifting for more cuts of social rights. We're having a huge amount of homelessness. We have unemployment. We have a social crisis, etc., etc. By focusing the topic or focusing the society onto other topics, external threats all the time, they make sure that we do not focus on our main problems within our borders, within our social networks, within the politics that affect our daily life, because that would mean that's threatening their policies, they're threatening their privileges of the politicians. And that's also kind of reflected in the sanctions against me. Because one point why they sanctioned me, I'm covering the social and violent protests within the European Union. These protests do not happen because I cover them. These protests have a material reason. People are unhappy. People can't afford food. People can't afford whatsoever. Since Corona, we have an uptick of prices of 30% in Europe, which is insane. One of the wealthiest continents on earth. And we don't have money for social housing. We don't have money for education. We don't have money for make sure that there is less unemployment, creating jobs. But we have suddenly 500 billion euros as a German government to spend money into war in Ukraine, to rearm Europe. So if you want to make sure that people support rearm Europe, you need to make sure that they do not focus on their daily problems. And then repression tools come to shut down these voices. And in a different sense, it's kind of also like the liberal democracy, bourgeois liberal democracy, which was established after the Second World War in Europe, which everyone upholds, all European citizen countries, etc., is no obstacle for them, because these very bourgeois and liberal democracy that these governments pushed for years and years are stopping them to push their agendas right now, to push their warmongering policies right now.
Yeah.
And that's also reflected in the sanction of their own citizens. It is against their democratic laws, against their constitutions, against whatsoever, but they're opening up now extrajudicial mechanisms to be able to do that. So by attacking tactically me or Jacque Baud and other people right now, whatever you think of my politics, of my worldview, but that's not the point here. It's about, like, by attacking me, they're coming after you in the future.
Yeah. I mean, they take you out. The entire system we build of the separation of powers and, of course, the due process and so on and so forth, and the different instances that you can go through when you're being punished by the state, all of it is switched off. It's circumvented, and from the very top, with people who are protected by immunity and whatnot, that you couldn't drag them in front of a court if you tried, even if the International Criminal Court would be the only court who would have the, at least in theory, the right to actually bring them in front of a court. But we see with Netanyahu what that means. Nothing. It means nothing. These people are protected by so many layers, and they are removing all and any kind of state protection from the individual, and you are probably the first such case living and residing inside that inside a EU member state. I'm at a loss of what to make out of that, because I never thought that it would go this fast. And now you also make a point out of not leaving. I mean, you in theory also have the right, since you're also Turkish national, you would have the right to return.
No, I'm not Turkish. I'm only German.
You're only German. Sorry, I got that wrong as well. I thought, really, you're
only German, no dual citizenship.
That makes it even worse. I mean, I'm sorry. I thought they just picked that, but that means they lied. They're just lying about that. They're just lying about your nationality.
I mean, the German government who gave me the German citizenship until today says I'm Turkish. Then I'm like, who gave me this German citizenship? I'm born here. I'm raised here. I went to school here, to kindergarten, to university, everything. I worked here. And you still tell me I'm not part of the society? Or
yeah, but it's not just that. I mean, it's not part of society whether they want to outcast you, yes or no. It's just a matter of factuality. If you do not have Turkish citizenship and a Turkish passport, Turkish citizenship, if you don't have that, then you're not Turkish, period. I mean,
that is technically disinformation on EU level, because I'm accused of being disinformation actor whatsoever. Until today, none of the German government bodies or European Union whatsoever showed me clearly this is disinformation. I think it's important to go back a little bit to make that point clear, how stupid it is. When we asked for the evidence pack, because my lawyer said, okay, you sanctioned this person extrajudicially, on which grounds? Like, what is the evidence? We asked for the evidence pack or evidence file, which is entirely the only thing based why I'm sanctioned. That's the evidence. We got it. By sending me that document, they also wrote a letter that I'm not allowed to publish or share it with third parties. I wonder why. That letter is even on my Twitter account, that part which says I'm not allowed to share it in case someone accuses me again of disinformation. The facts are out there. So we looked at the evidence pack. I'm sure you're familiar a little bit with German, European history. Mm-hmm. It is a historical fact that former SS Nazis from Hitler fascism, mm-hmm. after the fall of Hitler fascism in Europe, made career in NATO. That is a historical fact. Yes. Like, they built up, they were even NATO generals. I posted about that. The European Union said this is disinformation. That is not true.
That's the problem.
Another
The
topic,
term
just
disinformation has never been defined, to my knowledge. I don't know.
it's a historical
I don't think
fact.
there's
I
a
mean,
legal
if you go on
definition.
the NATO website, you will find the Nazis there who made careers there. Even in the German government after Second World War, post-war, amongst CDUs and whatsoever, the ruling party today. Another thing that was used to sanction me or renew my sanctions technically is that I complained online that German journalists do not, or mainstream journalists do not cover my story. They said, this is disinformation. I was like, wait, but this is a fact. So everything in that evidence dossier is just my journalistic work, that I complained that German government or European Union is spending billions for militarization. That's also a problem. Or the fact that I said, I published a video of a German CDU politician, ruling party's politician. I think he said 1.5, 2 years ago on TV, and that is recorded. And that video I posted something alongside bio Germans are more productive than migrant Germans. And I said, this is racism. And they said in the evidence pack, he does not say that. I'm like, this is literally what he says in the video. So now I'm asking myself, who is the disinformation actor here? Is it me, who's talking about facts, and who has a different opinion on Ukraine, on Gaza, on China, on whatsoever, US, everything else? Or is it you who's trying to manipulate that information and that opinion? Because disinformation until today is legally not, there is no definition for that. What is disinformation? There is no legal definition for this. Disinformation right now is technically what I don't like is this disinformation because I don't like it. Yeah. The sanction itself is also kind of like indicating that. I don't know if you read on the European Union's website how they explain sanctions. I'm just going to read it. It's just literally one sentence, which is very informative. Mm-hmm. Sanctions are not punitive and instead seek to bring about the change in the non-illegal behavior of the person. Non-illegal behavior. That means legal behavior needs to be changed. About in the policy or conduct of those targets with a view to promoting the objectives of the EU common foreign and security policy. So what this sentence means, that's on their website. The person is sanctioned for a legal behavior to make sure he thinks and promotes our policies. Yep. That is on the EU's website.
Yep. The freedom in the European Union is the freedom to agree with the European Union. If you do not agree with the European Union, then you're not allowed to voice that because you would be a disinformation agent. And it's absolutely dystopian. I mean, Orwell couldn't have foreseen this. I mean, this is... And you're absolutely right to point out, this is on the homepage. This is what they deem good information. You are... I'm speechless. He's saying I'm just speechless. Like,
I mean, I would even go so far and say I'm protecting today the liberal democracy more than them because I'm fighting against the injustice towards me. Because I'm like, wait, you give me a right to exercise on paper. When I exercise it, you punish me because it does not fit into your narrative. And that's problematic. It kind of reminds me also to the dark times. Sorry, I cut you off, but I always repeat that I think that parallel is very, very important to understand where things go, because you said also things went so fast. 33, I think it was 1933 in Germany, when the fascists were there, etc., etc. They had a law called Schriftleitergesetz. Schriftleitergesetz meant that the media, that newspapers, everything needed to promote the state policy and do not criticize something else. And if you did not do that, you got punished. And this is, I mean, is not the same, but there are parallels to that repressive mechanisms. So did we learn from our history in Europe, the very, very dark times that we went through, or our people who lived 85 years ago, 86 years ago, or is that something, that experience kind of refurbished with colorful colors and presented as something in defense against a foreign enemy? And it was the same thing again. Back then, there was a foreign enemy. There was an enemy. It was the Jews, the bad Jews. They're coming. We need to kind of protect our society. It was set by the fascists. And with that fear, they implemented a lot of things. They made it acceptable. And today it is, first it was, 2017, 18, 19. Maybe a lot of people do not remember now. It was fake news. Everywhere it was fake news. Fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news. Then it had changed into disinformation, 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 because fake news you could argue with. Fake news is wrong news, wrong information. They say, oh, that's not working because people can challenge that. Disinformation is broad, is very abstract. There is no definition. And then that changed in 2014 into hybrid warfare. What is hybrid warfare? Hybrid warfare, hybrid warfare, hybrid. I was sanctioned under hybrid warfare, technically.
Yeah, it's a non-legal nonsense term in order to just justify everything and on the way scare people into submission. It's very blatant. No, I'm very sorry about all of this because you're one of the first ones to suffer so much from it, but I swear to God, you're not going to be the last one.
No.
This will happen to a lot of people because this repressive mechanism, now that it is in place and now that it has proven how it can work, I mean, it's a wonderful tool for these very, very well protected people in these very, very lovely jobs to just crack down on anyone they don't like, because by now you don't even need to prove it. I mean, are you actually dragging them to the court? I mean, are you challenging them?
So what's you just before I answer, you make a good point. I need to prove they don't need to prove it. I think that's a very good keyword here. Liberal democracy says guilty, non-guilty until proven innocent. Now they reverse
until proven innocent, until proven guilty. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yes, sorry.
But they did that. I mean, that's what you just said. They first said like you're guilty until you prove your innocence.
Yes. Now they reversed it. They said you're guilty until you prove you're innocent. So the burden of proving something is on me, on the victim right now. It's just like, okay, that's a fundamental change of our fundamental understanding of the judicial system that we live in the last 500 years, maybe. Okay. So that switched. I mean,
plus, it's even worse. You have to prove that you didn't do something for which there's no definition of what it actually is.
That comes also to that. So that maybe that's a smart way for them as well. Like, okay, now find your way to prove something that you can't prove. You know,
that is not defined. So whenever you then do something, there was, oh no, we meant something else. We meant this one. I mean, it's such a, it gives again all the power to those people and nothing to you as the accused.
And that makes the legal way very hard. Now coming to your question again. So what is happening when you're sanctioned? You have to ask the commission or the body that sanctions you, I think 2 or 3 times you officially need to ask them to rethink the sanctions and take them back because they're wrong, because certain laws are violated, etc., etc. We did that 2 times, 2 times. And the second time they sent us a new evidence pack why they're sanctioning us again, or why they're keeping the sanctions, which was one like because I complained about German politics, because I complained no one is writing about my case, and that I still tweeted news as a journalist or my interpretation of certain events.
You didn't change your behavior. You didn't become a good boy.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Sit down, roll over and die.
Yes, which I will not do, like, because I did not do something wrong. So then the third time, my lawyers again wrote a letter and also highlighted that this is authoritarian, this is violating certain laws again and again. And Then they rejected our appeal the third time, and then you go submit your case to the European Court of Justice, which has now our file. And people asking, how long does it is it a good thing? Because on a judicial level, you're going to win. Yes, on the judicial level, I will definitely win. Because even a former Court of Justice judge prepared a report on sanctions and on my case, where she said, I think it was 1 month ago in Brussels in a European Parliament event, it was presented and said, these sanctions are illegal. They're violating the fundamental rights, the fundamental laws, human rights, which strengthened my hand as well. Even their own people say that now, like, this is going too far. Now my case is at the European Court of Justice. That can take 2 weeks, 2 months, 1 year, 6 months, 2 years until I have a hearing, if I have a hearing, because for them it's not an urgent matter. They're going to do that when they have time. But there is also another hidden thing inside here. So the sanctions, every 6 months, the sanctions are reviewed. And people are like, oh, that's nice. Maybe in 6 months, they're going to take that away. That's even more dangerous right now. Why? Because while I'm fighting the first sanctions with the reasoning that they gave on 20th of May, fighting that on a legal, or trying to fight that on a legal way, after 6 months, if they put another reason in, that is a second case now. Even if I win the first case, I'm still sanctioned. So you're in a loop the whole time.
If they amend what they have in the goddamn database, if they just add something new, then it's a new
just
case.
One single word, one single reason, it is a new case. Legally.
And they can do that any time, and you cannot.
Indefinite. In theory, I'm just saying, in theory, I could be indefinitely there. And on a sanction, in theory, obviously. Practice looks always different, because now the more people they sanction, I think that this is what they do not understand. The more people they sanction, the more people will complain. And the more the society will complain as well. Because at some point, like when I got sanctioned, I wrote, I think, almost like 30, 40 journalists, trade unions, NGOs, Reporters Without Borders, International Journalists Federations in Germany and outside, everywhere. None of them replied to me.
No way. Really?
None of them. None of these people replied to me. I wrote again. No one replied. No one is covering my topic, because, as you remember, I just said before 5 minutes ago, Schriftleitergesetz.
Yeah.
They're on the same line right now. But slowly, this liberal mainstream media, they're like, oh, wait, this is somehow getting, that is because it can affect me now as well. It is my right violated. Maybe that's going to help the more they sanction people. But until then, I think it is up to those few people who are sanctioned to push and push and push and push to make sure that the very rights of those people who are silent right now is protected as well. Or those who are attacking us, their rights are also protected, because it's not about them or us. It's about all our rights. And yeah.
And this is why this is the whole reason that they tell us in school, when they educate us, why we Europeans develop the state that protects its citizens, and why in Germany the basic law, your constitution, is a constitution that gives right to the citizen to protect themselves against the state, and so on and so forth. All of that gone, all of that out. And
I mean, someone who was in German education or Swiss or German speaking countries, let's say, like that, you always learn like the Second World War and why it's important, diversity, freedom of expression, different opinions. If it comes to the right-wing movement here in Germany, especially, the mainstream parties always say democracy needs to be strong enough to accept these opinions and deal with it, rather than shutting them down if it comes to the right wing. If it comes to my right, who's fighting right-wing ideologies, fascism, etc., that right is not granted. So I'm asking myself, like, wait, on which side are you right now? Right?
No.
And the other thing is also, the more, I'm just talking about the West right now because I'm here, right? the more the West is claiming to defend democracy historically, I think the more we should recall what happened in the past. They were saying we are defending democracy in Libya. We saw what happened after in Libya. They say we are defending democracy in Iraq, Afghanistan, and we bombed these countries for whatsoever reason. We saw what happened. They say we're defending democracy in Ukraine. They're making billions out of Ukraine. It is horrible what happens to Ukraine. Don't misunderstand me. I think it's wrong that Russia attacks Ukraine whatsoever. There are historical reasons why it happened. Yes, it's not one-sided, that I will always say. But it's not about defending the democracy there right now, in my opinion. It's about making good money, So the more people shout democracy, 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 which is in theory good, but in practice, when we look what the politicians do, it's getting very dangerous, because if you're living in a democratic society, you don't have to shout democracy so loud because it's there already.
Yeah. And you're making a wonderful point. Going to defend democracy outside always meant bringing a lot of death and destruction to these places. And now that the EU wants to defend democracy on the inside, it naturally has to turn these weapons to itself.
Yes.
And I will publish in a few hours from now the interview with Nathalie Jamp. And she says, as a Swiss Cameroonian, these repressions against individuals have always been there. The EU has used them forever against Africans, has used them forever on the outside to sanction people outside who they didn't like, even human rights activists. And now they're doing it to their own people. So the system is turning on its own, and it's using the weapons that we just were not aware that they were being used as a colonial form of repression against ourselves.
I mean, the term and the propaganda of defense is not defense itself. It is technically another way to sell the people the domestic militarization in a liberal face.
Yeah.
It's, we're defending. Like, if you look at what is happening right now with Ukraine, Russia, it's always Ukraine is defending our European values. No, Ukraine is defending itself. They're just about to die. They're just survival modes, which is very good that they do. And the same things are also happening in other places. But I think what is also happening, militarization of the society, but militarization of information right now.
Oh, yes.
And that's what I highlighted quite a lot, because they don't tell me that I say something wrong. I think what they're not happy with is the problem that I say it, the monopoly of information, the monopoly of education, the monopoly of showing a different reality in this world. And that's how the European Union turned information itself into a militaristic tool, and under the guise of defending democracy.
Last question, because I know you have to go, but what should we do? We who are now aware of how goddamn close we are in the European Union to something very dark. What should we do? Because Nathalie Jamp says we have to connect among each other and we have to create support networks. What is your recommendation? Practical steps.
I do think that we have to learn from our past, especially European past, is what happens in the dark times, 30s, 40s. People under the biggest repression, fascism, torture, death, and whatsoever, they still organize. We need to organize. We need to organize. We need to create our media. We need to create our parties. We need to inform the people. We need to push our politicians to look into these topics. We need to talk to each other. We need to use these means that you have, for example, online. I mean, online, that's also another thing. You can't control information online, which they're trying to do right now, by the way. That's a different thing with new laws. But that's the only thing what we can do, inform people. It is not about us, not about us individually. It is about us as a society. Other than that, I think right now, organize in every way. Organize as journalists, organize as activists, organize as politicians, organize as migrants, and so whatsoever. Just organize. And this is the only thing that we can do right now.
And write and protest, write letters, write emails to people who to say, like, look, this is not okay. So we have to answer this question, you know, we have to answer to people like what can the little guy and the little girl at home do in order to support this, because we are at a point where we do need collective action in order to get out of that.
Just one thing, comment on that. I don't think the people are not the little guy, little girl. They're the ones who have the power technically. We have the right, we have the power to elect them, and we have the right constitutionally to take them down there.
Yeah. And protest is one thing, but you know, all the steps that can and must be taken now, including, you know, action in order to reverse this. No. Hüseyin, anything else you want to tell us, or
No, the only thing is, don't be scared, don't be afraid to speak up, because once that scare mechanism finds grounds, roots, then things are very hard. But because that's the aim, speak up, have your opinion. Don't see your neighbor or someone with a different opinion as an enemy, rather than an opportunity to debate, to learn, educate yourself. I think that's also the problem. People are not educated anymore. They don't have interest. They don't even know what is happening around the world. People do not read what on EU level, what kind of decisions are made. Do that. Question it. Question me. Even me. I want that. You know, question me, debate with me, challenge me, because that's democracy. That's how we can build a good foundation again.
Yeah, we're not going to give them that. People who want to find you, should they follow you on X? Where should they follow you? Or where
I have
should
an
they find
X
you?
account. Yeah, I have an X account where I try still to inform people. Maybe you can link it or put it in the descriptions. I don't know. I'm quite a humble guy. I'm not promoting things because I think that's not the point. I'm on X.
Okay.
That's the only platform I still have.
Anyone who wants to follow the works, writings, and the development of his case, please find Hüsseyin Dogru on his X account. Hüsseyin Dogru, thank you very much for your time today.
I have to thank you.